Okay, so I was back out. I was free. I was a free man. I had some money in my pocket as well because now I'd complained to the probation service and said to them that I wanted loss of earnings for all the time that they'd locked me away, and I actually gained it. I think I got about, I think it was something like £3,500 in compensation for sort of loss of wages and things because they banged me up when I hadn't really done anything, and then obviously all the mess up of the getting late, getting out of the prison when I should have done. So I was out. It was sunny. I even remember it was the sunniest, the hottest summer on record at that point as well. I think it was about 2003, and it was just a great time. So things were working out well for me. I was back with my girlfriend again. She'd given me another chance, and obviously because I'd been authenticated, I'd been vindicated. I'd gone through the service, and I'd actually been the victim in this. So my family wanted to talk to me again. My girlfriend obviously got back with me, and I had my own little place because I obviously had some money, so I'd able to move into my own little bedsit. So things were looking up. But what had happened was I'd completely lost respect for authority. This was a definite changing point in my life. I was 21 now, and I had zero respect for authority. I'd tried a little. In my mind, I'd tried my best to go straight, but I hadn't really. Because my older brother was dealing drugs now, and he was doing very, very well. So he hooked me up with one of his partners from Kent, who had a drugs front down in a seaside town near me, and it was a little sunbed shop. But the drugs dealer, his wife sold soap kits as well. There wasn't an online at this point. there was no internet, I don't think. So she just sold them mail order, I think, these little soap kits. And me and this other lad would work in this tiny little warehouse and shop with a little sunbed in there. And we'd work there packing up these orders for soap and essential oils and things. And I'd come out smelling like a bath bomb every day. My probation officer would love it because I'd go in there, smelling like a bath bomb. It was very unusual. But it was a great time because, like I say, it was sunny, I had money, there was no responsibility. I'd go down there from about 9 to 5 every day. We'd sit around because it was fairly slow. It was in an industrial estate away from the town, so it was fairly quiet. Like I say, it was a drugs front. Thousands of pounds used to go through the books, but maybe 2 customers would come in a week. It was ridiculous. But yeah, so that would mean I would have plenty of time on my hands to sit around and do nothing. So I would start getting into bad habits. I started taking days off to go and spend with my brother, snorting coke and drinking and things, and just having fun in one of his friends' pubs. And it was just a great time, basically. I'd met these 2 Welsh lads when I was banged up. They were in for assault and GBH, I think. But they said to me that they could get hold of some great ecstasy pills. Now, at the time, ecstasy was a drug that you only needed to take 1 or 2 pills to get, have a good time. If it was your first time, you'd only take half a pill. And you could always see someone in a club, you'd be walking around and there'd be someone sat there, look like they've just done a marathon, sweating, can't stand up. And you'd look at them and you go, you did too many pills, didn't you? You tried to do 2 pills on your first time and it didn't work out. So yeah, it was always, the pills were really good back then. And these 2 lads said that they could get all the great pills. So they'd given me an address to write to. After a few weeks of being out, I wrote to this address with my mobile number. And they, out of the blue, I just got a phone call one day, and it was my Welsh friend inviting me up to go and see him and have a little meeting. So I travelled up to Port Talbot on the train, and went to go and see him in a little house in a council estate, and I met up with him and his wife, and we talked business, and I think I brought home 100 pills with me, and this was going to be the start of a great little relationship, and a fantastic opportunity. Like these lads were great drug dealers, but just really great lads as well. It was a pleasure doing business with them, and they made a lot of money. I've kind of kept in touch with them, but not really. I've seen recently 2 out of the 3 of them that I used to work with are living in £1 million houses now. They were electricians when I met them, working in the docks. in Port, and yeah, at least two of the three of them are millionaires, living in million pound houses now. It's ridiculous, and yeah, so I would get these pills and I would take them back and I'd sell them off. Thursday to Saturday would be the time when I would sell stuff, because it was just party time basically. I'd end up taking a bit of cocaine, I'd snort coke, I'd get a hold of 10 grams at a time, and I would just try and sell it on, and then I would obviously have these pills as well, and I'd sell those, and then next weekend I'd go up and get more. I'd end up meeting them in Bristol rather than going up to Wales, and I'd go and get sort of hundreds of pills at a time, and then give them out to not only my brother but other people, and we'd just sell these, and it was good. But I wasn't working, not properly, because I was now partying more than I was turning up to the drugs front. Then I was only getting a couple of days a week work, so when I wanted work, then suddenly he would ring me saying he didn't need me, and then I would not turn up when he did need me, and things like this. So I was getting irregular work money from there. I was spending far quicker than I was earning, and I'd run through all that money that I'd got from probation on clothes and partying and things like that. So I was literally, even though I was selling lots of drugs, I was living hand to mouth on the profit, because I still had rent to pay, I still had food to buy, and everything else. So I'd really messed up. I wasn't keeping on top of my finances at all. So one of the lads that I started getting in contact with, he would do burglaries, but commercial burglaries. And this was something I'd seen in prison, that people who did commercial burglaries got far less time than people who did burglaries of people's houses. You're talking about months rather than years. So he said to me that he was on this good little earner, where he was robbing building sites, and you'd get tools and money, and also that he had this idea about robbing show homes as well. So every building site and every housing estate, eventually, when they come to being finished, will have a show home that they'll kit out with all sorts of furniture and items. And we would just go along and kick the front door off, because it's an empty housing estate at night. We would go along, kick the front door off, and then just empty out the furniture of all the property. There'd be 2 or 3 of us doing it. We'd go around and we'd do about 2 or 3 building sites a night. It's not admirable. It's not. I don't like doing that sort of crime now. It's a kind of scumbag thing to do. It's people's livelihoods. It costs people money and things. But at the time, it was easy money for us. I didn't see past it. The person that I was at the time thought it was perfectly acceptable to go out and earn a week's wage in one night doing that sort of thing. And yeah, we would take it back to our area where we lived, and there was a guy who had a lockup who would sell second-hand furniture and things, and it was all tatty and crap. And within a few weeks, we had it all kitted out with brand new stuff. He loved us. He didn't really question where it came from, but it's fairly obvious. But nobody asks the questions if we say the right things, and we just say we're doing house clearances, and in a way, I suppose we were. But again, it's not always regular. I'm talking about a period here of about the whole time I was out for this summer was about a 6-month period. So there was some weeks where we didn't do anything. There were other weeks where we worked 3 times a week. Sorry, but it wasn't a steady income, and that was. It seems bizarre, but you when you're a criminal, you don't want to do the steady hours of a regular job, but you still do need the steady income of a regular job. And you have to be making good money to be able to sit back and do nothing really, which is what you want to do as a criminal. And like I say, I hadn't quite got my finances in order. When I made good money, I spent it very quickly, and then worried about everything, the bills afterwards, which wasn't a very good way of living, because I was always needing then a big score to just pay rent and bills and things, or I would end up living in places for a few weeks and then moving on. I'd fall out with the landlord and I'd move off without paying the rent, or I'd live with friends for a few weeks and just doss on their sofa for a couple of weeks without paying anything, but just we'd have a few laughs with pills and drugs and stuff. So I had a completely unsettled life. So I eventually, because I was seeing my girlfriend still at the time as well, she would think that I was doing building work, or kind of just labouring and stuff like this, and if I had to if I was on a 2-day bender selling drugs or whatever, I would tell her that I'd be working away, and I'd come back with a handful of cash, so she'd believe it. But I'd come back with a snivelling nose where I'd been snorting coke all weekend, or I'd come back, not being able to fucking open my eyes where I was coming down from fucking whatever drugs I'd been taking. So it was irregular, it was chaotic, and she bared the brunt of that lifestyle also. She had a 9-to-5 job. She had a good family. Nobody in her family was criminals. None of her friends were criminals. But she was excited by being with me, and she liked that lifestyle of the police always, being on the peripheries with criminals and gangsters always knocking on the doors and things like this. She, as much as she was a good girl, she liked the bad boys in her life. Now, I also was becoming more of a shitbag. Now, what I mean by that is I'd gone bad, as in when I went to prison, I was a good little Cornish lad. I'd committed an armed robbery, but that was because I'd gone off the rails. It wasn't because I was a bad person. Now, what you realise in prison is you have to adapt and change and become this animal. And once you get out, you realise that you're now a lion walking amongst the deer, and it's only you and what you choose to do that stops you from being that animal again. So I was on a different level to the local criminals here. So I quickly started feeding on the prey and the weak, which meant that if someone came to me and wanted drugs and I didn't respect them, or I thought I was stronger than them, then we'd rob them. And I wouldn't do it in a kind of obvious way, but I would set them up. So I would take their money and I'd send them to somewhere to go and get the drugs. And as they left the building or the flat or the area, wherever it was, someone else would come up on a bike or in a car and just jack them for the drugs when they were walking away. So we'd have the money and the drugs again. Now, I did this to people that I didn't respect or we didn't like, or I just didn't think we'd be able to do anything about it. We did it a handful of times, and eventually word starts to get out that I think 2 of these people got together and found out that I went and got drugs and then I got beat up, and then I went and got drugs and got beat up, and they kind of put 2 and 2 together and realised that we were setting them up. So they came round to my house, and at the time, because I was living here and there. My mum was renting out bedsits at the time, so I was living in a bedsit that was rented out by my mum. And these 3 lads come round to come and fill me in, and I ended up going out there and just flipping out on them, and punch one in the mouth, grab the other one. The third one's like backing up. He's shit his pants because he's supposed to be the tough guy, and everything's gone wrong and blah blah blah. So I've ended up just sweeping these 3 guys up, just knocking one out, beating the other one up, and battering the other one, chasing the other one around the garden. And my mum's called the police on me. My mum's called the police on me, that's again. This is all these little things are just to break down in trust and things, But I don't see that I see it as all this stuff happening to me, whereas I don't see that I'm the one causing all of this. So, yeah, I'm selling drugs when I can. We're robbing people when we can. We've now started, because one of the bedsits I was living in, there was this lad underneath me, and he kind of liked the way we were living and things, the way we were holding ourselves and handling ourselves in town. And he came up one day and he'd obviously robbed this guy that he didn't respect, and he turned up and he's like, "Oh, I've got 10 grand and I've got half a kilo of coke." Blah blah blah. I'm like, "Well, yeah, man, that's good." Blah, blah. Anyway, we as soon as he's gone back downstairs, I've phoned my pals and they've just gone in there and kicked the door in and gone beat him up and taken it off him. And we've then just started sniffing his drugs and spent his money and that. But we realised all of these burglaries we're doing late at night on building sites and stuff is earning us a couple of £100. And we're robbing people for drugs, and we're taking drugs from people downstairs and things, and it's much more profitable. So, we started targeting drug dealers who couldn't defend themselves. So we basically just made a list of all the people that we knew, or we'd go to areas where we weren't quite known, and we'd find out who the little 19-year-old drug dealers were, or who the weak people were in town, and we'd find a way of exploiting them and getting into their circle, or we'd just go and kick the door off and just go and take everything they had. It would be one way or the other. and that worked very, very well for us, until one day it all went wrong. Because I was living with my girlfriend at the time, and I'd been trying to convince her that I was going to get a better job. You know, the relationship with the chap from Kent had gone a bit sour, because he liked to go to the casino on a Friday night, and he'd pay us in cash into the bank on Saturday. And if he had a bad night at the casino on a Friday, he wouldn't have any money to pay me on a Saturday. So you can imagine, like I say, my financial situation was a little bit piss poor. And then I'd go to my bank and there'd be no money in there because he'd spunked it all at the casino. So I'd be kicking off at him on the phone. He was getting shitty with me, so we ended up parting ways. I went to go and work in a factory, which again is minimum wage for long hours. It wasn't suiting me, but I had to hold down. I was having this whole position of trying to seem like I was doing good, and trying to seem like I was going straight, but also making ridiculous money, robbing drug dealers and committing crime and selling drugs. So it was a terrible position I was putting myself in, trying to look like I was being straight, but also doing what I wanted on the offside. So in the couple of months that I was working at this factory, I'd already taken several days off sick. I found the best way of doing it because it was a food processing factory. So if you told them you had the shits, or if you told them you had some sort of diarrhea, then that you had to take 2 days off. So that was what I used to tell them. I've had some sort of food poisoning or diarrhea. Do you know what I mean? In 2 months, I had about 3 cases of fucking food poisoning. It was mad. But in reality, I'd be down the pub snorting coke, or I'd go and do a drug deal, because I could earn, off just passing a bulk amount of drugs and pills, I could earn £200 just handing drugs from one person to another. Or I could earn £30 a day working at this factory. It was, it just didn't make sense to me. So, one day I went into the factory, and strangely enough, I'd just been promoted. I'd been given more training to use a bigger machine. So I ended up being trained how to use this machine that wrapped up the boxes, and then put them onto the pallets and got them onto the lorries. And I was just doing that, and I'd kind of thought that this hard work was starting to pay off, and I was starting to move up in the factory. And the owner of the factory came over to me and was like, can you come into the office 1 second? I was like, this is all going well, and just as I got into the office, there was some CID standing in various places around the office and behind the door and things, and they arrested me for aggravated burglary. And I couldn't understand what that would be, because all the burglaries we'd done had been commercial burglaries, and nobody had been involved. For an aggravated burglary, there normally has to be a person involved or someone in the building, and there never was. There was burglaring empty buildings. So I couldn't understand what the aggravated part of the burglary was, but they were taking me. And I was still on my licence from the armed robbery. So this meant that whatever they were charging me with, I would have to serve the rest of my licence, which was about 8 months. And then I would have to start the sentence for the burglary, the aggravated burglary, and I could be looking at another couple of years for that. So I really didn't know what was going on. So I sat in the police cells, and I was really, really distraught. It's a very low time in the police cells, because it's some of the hardest time you'll ever do, because it really is sensory deprivation. You're in a room where the light is on all the time. It's either dim or it's bright, but it's on all the time. You've got 4 walls and a small silver stainless steel toilet that's literally just a bowl, so that nothing can be kind of hidden or flushed in it. And you've got just that kind of thick glass, those thick square tile glass things in the ceiling that are a few inches thick, that you can't see through. You can just make out shapes of the outside, and it's a very lonely place to be. The police will always try and break you in those cells, and it's a tactic they'll use. So they'll arrest you in the morning. So say they arrest you at 9 o'clock in the morning. They won't interview you till around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So they'll leave you in that cell for a long time. And especially if you're stressing, or if you're unsure, or you're nervous, it's a hell of a place to be, and you'll break if you're not strong enough. But I've been through those police cells so many times, I know the routine. So I tend to just get my head down and get some sleep, or I try and try and relax. But this time I knew I'd fucked up, because I'd been caught again for something I knew I'd probably done, and I knew I was on my license, so I probably wouldn't get any bail because I was already out on trust. There was a good chance they wouldn't let me out on bail again. I'd already broken the trust. So now I have to have all those awkward conversations with my family, who are only just back behind me and supporting me because they thought I'd been wrongly accused before. It was a very low time. Now, when my solicitor came in, he told me that it wasn't one of the burglaries from the building site that he was here to talk about. This was one of the times where I had robbed a drug dealer. Now, the drug dealer had then gone to the police and said that I'd burgled him and took all his property. Now, I didn't take one bit of his property. All I took was his drugs and money. But he'd then turned it around. He'd emptied out some of the stuff from his flat and gone to the police and told him that I'd burgled his flat. I'd intimidated him and his partner and taken his possessions. Now, he's got 3 witnesses in the room all talking about me and saying it was me. Now, I definitely did it, but I didn't do that. So I'm in this strange position now where, there's 3 people saying I did it. I didn't actually do what they said I did, but I did generally do what happened. So I had to plead guilty. I had to plead guilty to aggravated burglary. I had to tell my partner that I was going to do this. I told her she should leave me, because I never saw relationships in prison lasting more than 6 months. And I knew that there was a good chance I'd be going down for at least 2 years, maybe 3 or 4, because of the basic fact that I'd done this while I was on license. I'd been given trust and I'd broken it and committed more crimes, violent crimes against people again. They were going to throw the book at me. So I told my partner on the phone, in my phone call from the police station, that she should leave me, and that I didn't want her to stay with me. During the interview process, you have pens and bits of paper to sign and things, and I'd taken one of the pens from the room. And when I sat in the police cell, I remember vividly thinking that I'd fucked up so badly that I wanted to end this all now. I'd been given chances after chance after chance, and I'd fucking fucked it up again. And exhausting as prison was, I didn't think that I was ready to spend another few years in prison fighting my corner. And I took the pen and I wrote on the wall, R.I.P. And I looked at the veins in my arm, and I wondered how I could get this biro, and I wondered how I could stab myself. I wondered how that I could break the skin, open up the vein, and allow blood to pour out in great enough quantity to kill myself in this police cell. Now I had hours to spend in there looking at it. I couldn't do it. I was too much of a coward to hurt myself. I didn't have what it took. So I just had to wait and see what came.